The sky above Earth darkened as enormous ships filled with alien invaders descended. The Kiteri, a race known for their advanced technology and ruthless conquests, had arrived. Led by their powerful queen, Zithra, the Kiteri had already wiped out countless civilizations across the galaxy. Now, they set their sights on Earth. At first, the humans didn't know what to expect. The Kiteri ships were massive, their weapons powerful enough to reduce entire cities to rubble. News reports flooded the airwaves, showing footage of the alien ships hovering above major cities. Panic spread, and military forces scrambled to prepare for the worst. But what the humans didn't realize was that this was just the beginning. Queen Zithra watched from her command center aboard the flagship. She was cold, calculating, and used to getting what she wanted. The Kiteri had never encountered a species like humanity before, and Zithra was curious about what made humans so special. She'd conquered so many planets and civilizations, but Earth was different. The humans were primitive compared to her people, small, fragile creatures. They should have been easy to crush. But Zithra had been misinformed. When the first Kiteri forces touched down on Earth, they expected to face an easy battle. The first wave of soldiers marched into the heart of a major city, their alien armor gleaming in the sunlight. They were prepared for quick and overwhelming destruction. But the humans fought back, fiercely, and with unexpected resourcefulness. Instead of running in fear, the humans stood their ground. Some threw themselves at the Kiteri soldiers with makeshift weapons. Others used their environment to create traps. A group of civilians, armed with little more than kitchen knives and hunting rifles, successfully ambushed a Kiteri patrol. Zithra watched, baffled by their bravery. How could these weak, insignificant beings stand up to her superior forces? In the following days, more Kiteri ships landed across the globe, and yet the humans didn't give in. They fought back with determination that surprised even the most experienced Kiteri soldiers. The alien invaders had expected the humans to surrender, to run and hide in fear, but that wasn't happening. They had underestimated the spirit of humanity. Zithra's curiosity turned into frustration. She had ordered the Kiteri to crush all human resistance, but each time they seemed to be beaten, they came back stronger. The humans were relentless. Their ability to regroup, to strategize in the face of overwhelming odds, amazed Zithra. She had never encountered a species so difficult to break. On Earth's battlefields, human soldiers, despite lacking the advanced technology of their alien invaders, fought with a passion and perseverance that could not be matched. They knew their homes, their families, and their planet were at risk. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a fight for everything they held dear. Zithra began to wonder, what was it about these humans? Why were they able to resist when other species had failed so easily? Could it be their sheer determination? Her mind raced as she pondered this question. She wasn't used to not having the answer, and it unsettled her. As the days passed, Zithra ordered her forces to begin a full-scale invasion, confident that the humans' resistance would eventually falter. But as the Kiteri advanced, they were met with more resistance. Human soldiers fought through exhaustion, some falling to their knees only to rise again moments later, ready to continue the fight. Zithra couldn't deny it any longer. There was something about humans that made them different. They had an endurance, a strength of will, that was unlike anything she had ever seen. In a galaxy full of advanced species, Earth's inhabitants were starting to impress her. But Zithra wasn't sure yet whether this strange resilience would be enough to defeat her. Earth had a long way to go before it could truly challenge the might of the Kiteri. Still, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of something. Interest, maybe even respect, for the species that had dared to stand up to her. She had underestimated humanity. And now she was curious to see just how far their stamina would take them. As the battle raged on across Earth, Queen Zithra grew more intrigued by humanity's strange and unexpected resilience. Her Kiteri forces, who had easily crushed other species, found themselves struggling against the human spirit. Each time they thought they had broken the humans, they would rise again, ready to fight. Zithra could not comprehend this. It was as if humans had an unbreakable will. Zithra ordered her commanders to find a way to break the humans. She knew she couldn't just destroy them with force alone. They were far more unpredictable than she had imagined. So she decided to test them in a different way, to understand just how far their limits truly went. One morning, a strange message came through the Kiteri command channel. It was a challenge, but not a regular one. The message was addressed to Queen Zithra personally. It was from a human soldier, Sergeant Jackson, a man who had gained recognition for his incredible endurance and bravery. The message was simple: "We will not surrender." Zithra stared at the message, her mind racing. For the first time, she found herself faced with an enemy who didn't give up. Humans didn't fear death the way other species did. They fought not for survival, but for something deeper. What was it? What could this soldier possibly be thinking to send such a message? Her curiosity pushed her to act. Zithra ordered her best officers to bring Sergeant Jackson to her. She wanted to speak with him, to understand what made him tick. She was determined to break his spirit, to learn why he and his people were so difficult to defeat. Jackson was brought aboard the Kiteri flagship, where he was held in a cell, awaiting Zithra's arrival. He was bruised, dirty, and exhausted, but his eyes burned with defiance. He didn't seem afraid. Zithra entered the room with an air of authority, her sharp gaze never leaving him. For a long moment, they stared at each other, and the silence between them was thick with tension. "You are the one who sent the message." Zithra's voice was cold, commanding. Jackson stood tall, despite his injuries. "I'm Sergeant Jackson, and I represent the people of Earth. We don't surrender." Zithra studied him carefully, her mind working. "I don't understand. Your people are weak, fragile. We have technology that can obliterate entire cities in a second, and yet you persist. Why? What drives you?" Jackson's response was simple. "We fight because we have no choice. We fight for our homes, our families, and our future. We fight because we're human." Zithra felt a flicker of something she didn't expect. Respect. It was a strange feeling, and she quickly pushed it aside. "So you think this stubbornness will save you?" she asked, her voice colder now. Jackson didn't flinch. "It's not stubbornness. It's who we are. You'll never break us, no matter how hard you try." Zithra's mind raced. Could it really be that simple? Were humans truly this driven, this unyielding? Her Kiteri soldiers were strong, but they didn't possess the same will to fight that Jackson and his comrades did. She had seen it in the way the humans fought, not with the precision and discipline of her soldiers, but with a raw, unfiltered passion. Every time they were knocked down, they stood back up. Every time they were pushed, they pushed back harder. Zithra thought for a moment. "I will offer you a challenge, Sergeant Jackson. If you truly believe your people cannot be defeated, then prove it to me. I will give you a test. You and a few of your best soldiers will face my finest warriors. If you can defeat them, I will leave your planet in peace. But if you fail, your entire species will fall." The challenge was set. Jackson didn't hesitate. He had no doubt that humanity could withstand anything. "We'll take your test," he said confidently. Zithra watched him with a calculating gaze. She didn't believe for a second that humans could match her warriors, but something about Jackson's unshakable confidence made her hesitate. She couldn't shake the feeling that this would be more than just a test of strength. This would be something deeper. The next day, the battle began. Zithra sent her top warriors, strong, fast, and deadly, against Jackson's small team of humans. The humans were outmatched in terms of weapons and technology, but they had something the Kiteri warriors didn't: an unbreakable will to fight. As the battle unfolded, Zithra observed, intrigued by what she saw. Her soldiers were quick, but the humans kept coming. Even when they were injured, they fought on, and when they were knocked down, they got back up. Zithra was no fool. She knew she had underestimated humanity before. But this This was something different. Was it possible that Sergeant Jackson's words were true? Could the humans really win through sheer willpower alone? The test had only just begun, but already Zithra's mind was beginning to change. As the battle raged on, Zithra's curiosity about humanity grew deeper. She had always believed that her K'Kari soldiers were the epitome of strength and endurance. But watching Jackson and his small group of human soldiers fight with unrelenting determination was something she had never experienced before. They were battered, bruised, and exhausted, but they kept coming back, again and again, like a force of nature. Zithra had underestimated them. She realized that physical strength alone was not enough to defeat humanity. There was something more, something intangible, that drove them. The way they fought wasn't just about surviving. It was about a fierce, unbreakable will to protect their people and their home. The battle came to an end with both sides heavily wounded, but the humans had survived. They hadn't won in the traditional sense, but they had shown Zithra something she couldn't ignore: their spirit. It was this spirit that kept them fighting, no matter the odds. She decided to find out more. Zithra ordered her top scientists to study the human soldiers, especially Sergeant Jackson. She wanted to understand how they could endure so much, how they could keep fighting when it seemed like all hope was lost. She couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. The scientists began their work immediately, running tests and analyzing the human physiology. They examined Jackson's heart rate, his muscle function, and his mental state. What they discovered shocked them. Humans, it seemed, were capable of pushing their bodies far beyond what other species could. Their muscles weren't any stronger than the K'Kari's, but they had an extraordinary ability to recover quickly after intense physical strain. Their hearts could pump oxygen more efficiently than the K'Kari, and their brains were wired for intense focus under pressure. It wasn't just that they could endure pain, it was that they could push through it. They didn't just survive physical stress, they thrived in it. But the most surprising discovery was something the scientists hadn't anticipated. Humans had an ability to form deep emotional bonds that fuel their strength. The stronger their connection to each other and to their cause, the more they could endure. Jackson and his soldiers fought not just for survival, but for their families, their friends, and their home. This deep sense of purpose, Zithra realized, was what made them truly dangerous. Zithra had never encountered a species like this before. The K'Kari were powerful, but their strength came from their advanced technology and genetics. They relied on their physical superiority to win. Humans, however, relied on something deeper, a sense of unity, and an unyielding belief in themselves. It was something that could not be measured with technology or weapons. It was something that made them resilient beyond measure. The more Zithra learned about humanity, the more she began to respect them. She had thought of them as weak, primitive creatures, but now she saw them as something else entirely. They were unpredictable, driven, and full of surprises. She had never encountered a species that fought so fiercely, not just for their own survival, but for the survival of everything they held dear. As she watched Jackson and his team recover from their battle, Zithra's thoughts turned to her own people. The K'Kari were strong, yes, but they lacked the same depth of connection to one another. Her soldiers followed orders without question, but there was no bond like the one she saw between the humans. They fought together, lived together, and died together. Zithra found herself contemplating a new question. Could the K'Kari ever develop the kind of unity that made humans so powerful? Was it even possible for her people to experience the same kind of determination that Jackson and his soldiers had shown? She didn't know the answer, but one thing was clear. She had a new respect for humanity. She turned to one of her commanders, her mind still racing with new thoughts. "Increase the pressure on the humans," she ordered, her voice calm but firm. "But don't destroy them. Not yet. I want to see more. I want to understand them better. There's something about their spirit that I need to know." The commander nodded, but Zithra's thoughts were already far ahead of him. She was no longer just a conqueror. She was a student, trying to understand a species that had surprised her in ways she never thought possible. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Zithra found herself wondering if it was the humans who held the true power after all. The war between the Kiteri and humanity raged on, but with each passing day, Queen Zithra found herself increasingly fascinated by the humans. She had expected them to fall, just like the other species she had conquered. She had thought they would break under pressure, but they didn't. In fact, the more she pushed them, the more they fought back. Zithra observed Sergeant Jackson closely, watching how he and his fellow soldiers handled every challenge. It wasn't just his physical ability that stood out. It was his unwavering determination. When Jackson was injured, he would keep moving. When his team faced impossible odds, they didn't give up. Instead, they found a way to keep going, often using clever tactics that caught the Kiteri off guard. The more she watched, the more Zithra realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It wasn't their armies. It was their spirit. But Zithra was determined to break this spirit. She couldn't allow the humans to keep resisting. They had to be defeated, and she would do whatever it took. She devised a new plan, one that would test the humans in ways they had never been tested before. She would force them to face their greatest fears. If their will to fight was as strong as it seemed, then she would find out. Zithra ordered the creation of a simulated battle scenario. It would take place in a massive underground chamber, a place where the humans couldn't use the terrain to their advantage. The room would be filled with obstacles, traps, and dangers. Her best soldiers would be the ones to face them. But there was a twist. The Kiteri would fight alongside them, not against them. Zithra wanted to see how the humans would react to working with their enemies. Could they maintain their resolve even in the face of forced cooperation with their conquerors? Sergeant Jackson and his team were brought into the chamber, unaware of what awaited them. The moment they stepped inside, the doors slammed shut behind them, and a holographic voice boomed from the speakers. "Your challenge begins now," the voice said coldly. "Your survival depends on cooperation. You will fight alongside Kiteri soldiers. Fail to do so, and you will perish." Jackson and his team were immediately on alert. They had no choice but to work with the Kiteri, at least for now. The moment the simulation started, a wave of Kiteri soldiers appeared. They were fierce, well-trained, and dangerous. But the humans didn't hesitate. They quickly formed a defensive line, moving as one unit, relying on their communication and teamwork. Even though the Kiteri soldiers were technically their allies, it was clear that trust didn't come easily. There were moments of tension as the humans and Kiteri soldiers had to rely on each other, but Jackson took the lead, barking orders, keeping his soldiers focused. The fight was intense. They faced enormous armored creatures, traps that could crush them at any moment, and swarms of dangerous alien wildlife. The Kiteri soldiers, though stronger and faster, were unfamiliar with the creatures and traps. The humans, however, knew how to think on their feet. Jackson's team had an advantage in their adaptability and resourcefulness. While the Kiteri relied on brute strength and advanced technology, the humans used their environment and teamwork to outsmart their enemies. When a trap was triggered, it was the humans who knew how to disable it. And when the creatures attacked, it was the humans who showed how to outmaneuver them. Through every challenge, Jackson's leadership shone through. He kept his team calm, focused, and united. Even though they were in a life-or-death situation, his soldiers didn't panic. They worked together as a unit, overcoming every obstacle thrown at them. Zithra, watching from her control room, was both impressed and frustrated. Her own soldiers were struggling to keep up with the humans, who seemed to be more effective in their teamwork. Zithra had expected the humans to break down when forced to cooperate with their enemies. Instead, they found a way to make it work. They had no choice but to put their trust in the Kiteri soldiers, and while there were moments of hesitation, the humans made it clear that survival came first. In the end, they completed the challenge, having faced down every danger that Zithra had thrown at them. Zithra's frustration grew. The humans had passed her test. She had tried to break their spirit, to force them to cooperate with their enemies, but all she had done was prove that humanity could survive anything. As the simulation ended, Jackson turned to the Kiteri soldiers who had fought alongside them. There was no celebration, but there was a mutual understanding. They had worked together, and they had won. Jackson's team didn't need to say a word. Their actions had spoken for them. Zithra was stunned. She had thought the test would break the humans. Instead, it had only shown her how powerful their unity and determination truly were. She had underestimated them once again. And this time, she wasn't sure how much longer her forces could keep up. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting with something much stronger. Something that even the Kiteri couldn't defeat. A deep, unshakable resolve. Zithra realized that the true strength of humanity was not just in their bodies, but in their hearts. And that made them more dangerous than she had ever imagined. As the days passed, the war between the Kiteri and humanity showed no signs of slowing down. Queen Zithra, once certain of her inevitable victory, now found herself facing something she hadn't expected. Doubt. Her soldiers were strong, her technology advanced, but humanity refused to break. Every time the Kiteri pressed harder, the humans fought back harder still. And now, Zithra had to admit, something had changed. Humanity's spirit was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Sergeant Jackson and his team had earned Zithra's respect, but it wasn't just because of their physical endurance or combat skills. It was their ability to adapt, to remain calm under pressure, and, above all, their refusal to give in. Jackson's leadership was a key factor in this, but it wasn't just him. It was the entire human race. Zithra had learned that it wasn't about fighting for victory. It was about fighting for something deeper: family, home, and the future. It was an idea that Zithra could not grasp. Her people fought for conquest, for power, and for control. They didn't fight with the same kind of purpose. To the Kiteri, survival and dominance were all that mattered. The humans, on the other hand, had something much more powerful, a sense of unity and hope, and it was this hope that Zithra found herself struggling to understand. The Kiteri queen had watched as the humans, battered and bruised, continued to push back against her forces. Entire cities were destroyed, yet the humans rebuilt. Entire platoons were lost, but new recruits joined the fight. There was no breaking them, no surrender. Zithra found herself in her command center, staring at the screens that displayed the ongoing battles. Her mind raced, torn between frustration and awe. How could a species so seemingly weak, so small in the vastness of the galaxy, show such incredible resilience? Queen Zithra, her top commander, Valorix, interrupted her thoughts. We've encountered another human stronghold. They're well defended. But I've seen something, Your Majesty. They're more organized than before. Their strategies are becoming more advanced. It's almost as if they're learning. Zithra glanced at the screen, where images of human forces regrouping and strengthening their positions were displayed. It was true. In the early days of the invasion, they had fought in chaotic, disorganized ways. But now, they were starting to fight with military precision. They were adapting to the Kiteri tactics and improving. Zithra could feel the tension in the air. We should strike quickly, before they become more formidable, Valorix suggested, his voice urgent. Zithra paused, considering his words. Normally, she would have agreed without hesitation, but something held her back. The humans were adapting faster than any species she had ever encountered. They weren't just reacting. They were evolving. They are learning from us, Zithra said quietly, more to herself than to anyone in the room. Learning? Valorix repeated, surprised. How is that possible? We are superior in every way. Zithra turned to him, her eyes hard. That is what we thought. But the humans, they're different. They don't just survive. They grow stronger with every loss. They adapt. And they fight for something we can't understand. She walked slowly to the edge of the room, her mind spinning. The Carry had never encountered an enemy that didn't just react to their power, but learned from it. Her species was designed to dominate, to crush others with sheer force. But the humans were showing her something completely new: the power of growth, of change, of hope. The Carry had never known a true challenge, until now. "We can't keep this up forever," Zithra muttered, almost to herself. She was starting to see the cracks in her plan. The Carry might win battles, but humanity was winning the war, for it wasn't about defeating them physically. It was about defeating their will. And the longer the war dragged on, the more Zithra realized that the human will was too strong to break. Suddenly, Zithra heard a familiar voice. "My queen, we've received a transmission from the humans. They want to speak with you." Zithra hesitated for a moment. What could they possibly want? But curiosity got the better of her, and she agreed to the communication. On the screen appeared Sergeant Jackson once again. His face was marked with battle scars, but his expression was unwavering. "We don't want to fight anymore," Jackson said simply. "We're not asking you to leave. We're asking you to understand. We fight not because we hate you, but because we love our home. If you leave us in peace, we'll show you what it means to live in harmony. But we won't stop until you understand." Zithra blinked, taken aback by his words. The human seemed almost peaceful. His message wasn't one of surrender or weakness. It was one of strength, of conviction. "I think you're beginning to understand us," Jackson said. "And maybe it's time for you to start listening." Zithra stood in silence, staring at the screen, her thoughts swirling. For the first time since the invasion began, she wasn't sure if victory was her destiny anymore. Perhaps humanity had something to teach her after all. Zithra stood in her command center, the holographic image of Sergeant Jackson still lingering on the screen. His words echoed in her mind. "We fight not because we hate you, but because we love our home." The Kiteri Queen had never felt more uncertain. She had conquered countless worlds, obliterated entire civilizations, yet the humans were proving to be something entirely different. They didn't just resist her, they'd resisted with purpose. And that purpose, Zithra realized, was what made them unstoppable. Her mind churned as she watched Jackson's transmission fade from the screen. The humans had asked for peace, but peace was something Zithra had never offered. Her people believed in domination, in the idea that only the strongest survived. Yet, as she observed humanity's unwavering resolve, she began to question the very foundations of her beliefs. "I don't understand them," Zithra muttered to herself, pacing the room. "They don't fight for power. They fight for something far more personal, something that cannot be destroyed." Valerix, her top commander, stood beside her. He had witnessed the human struggle firsthand, and was equally perplexed. "They are unlike any species we've faced, Your Majesty. They refuse to yield. They don't just want to survive. They want to live." Zithra nodded slowly. "But how can they fight this hard, for so long, without breaking? We've pushed them to the edge of destruction, and still they fight. How can they be so relentless?" Her thoughts were interrupted when a voice came through the speakers. It was Jackson again, sending another message, this time with a different tone. "My queen," his voice was calm, almost soothing, yet resolute. "We've had enough of fighting. We've lost so much, but we won't stop. Our families, our homes, they mean everything to us. But we want to end this, not with more bloodshed, but with understanding. We are not your enemies. We are a people who want peace. If you listen, we can find a way to live together." Zithra felt a strange sensation, something she couldn't quite place. It wasn't anger, but an unfamiliar feeling. Was it doubt? Could it be that the humans weren't as weak as she had once thought? Could they be right? She had never considered peace before. It had never seemed like a possibility. Her mind had always been fixed on conquest, on winning, on taking. But now she was unsure. Valerix spoke again, breaking Zithra's reverie. "Your Majesty, we have lost countless soldiers. Our forces are stretched thin. The humans grow stronger every day, adapting to our tactics. They seem to be evolving before our eyes. Zithra's eyes narrowed as she thought about the human resilience. She couldn't deny it. The more they fought, the more they adapted. They learned, they improved. They didn't give up. She had always thought that strength came from domination, but the humans had something else. Their strength came from something deeper, a will that could not be crushed. "You're right, Valorix," she replied quietly, almost to herself. "We may be fighting the wrong battle. Maybe it's not about defeating them anymore. Maybe it's about learning from them." For the first time in years, Zithra felt a shift in her perspective. She had spent her entire life conquering, destroying, proving that her people were the most powerful in the galaxy. But what if there was a different way? What if the Kiteri could learn from the humans' ability to unite, to fight for something greater than themselves? Zithra's thoughts were interrupted by another transmission. This time, it wasn't from Jackson, but from the human leaders on Earth. The message was direct, clear, and powerful. "We understand your strength, Queen Zithra," the human leader said, his voice steady. "But we are asking you to stop. We are not asking for pity nor mercy. We are asking for a chance to show you that we can live side by side, that our strength doesn't have to come from violence, but from cooperation." Zithra's heart raced. She knew the humans were offering something she had never considered: peace. The idea seemed foreign to her. Her people had always believed that peace was a weakness, that it was a surrender to the enemy. But now, standing on the edge of a war that seemed endless, Zithra was beginning to question that. Her eyes went to the holographic map of Earth, now showing the human forces regrouping, rebuilding, and standing tall. She saw the faces of the human soldiers who had fought so bravely, who had lost so much, and who still stood firm. And for the first time in her life, Zithra felt something stir inside her. A deep, gnawing feeling that perhaps the Kiteri's way wasn't the only way. "I will listen," Zithra said quietly, almost to herself. She looked at Valorix, who was waiting for her orders. Valorix was surprised by her words. "Listen, my queen, but they are our enemies." Zithra turned to face him, her eyes filled with a new resolve. "Maybe it's time we start thinking of them as something else. Let's see what they have to offer. Let's see if they truly can teach us something we've never known." As Zithra made her decision, she knew that this was a turning point, not just for the war, but for her people. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the future of the Kiteri might no longer lie in domination. It might lie in something much more powerful: understanding. The decision to listen to humanity was one Zithra would never forget. It had come at a time when the Kiteri Empire was at a crossroads, and the war with Earth was stretching her people's resources to the limit. The humans, once viewed as weak and helpless, had proven to be the most formidable enemies Zithra had ever faced, not because of their weapons, but because of their hearts. Their unyielding resolve had cracked the armor of her certainty. Zithra knew that continuing the war was no longer an option. She had seen the humans grow stronger with every battle, adapting faster than her own forces. But it was more than that. There was something in their spirit that had begun to change her, a feeling she had never encountered before. Could peace, even with her enemies, be possible? Back on Earth, Jackson and the leaders of the human forces awaited her response. Zithra was no longer sure what to expect. Would they see her as weak for considering peace? Would the humans reject her offer, unwilling to trust the very species that had ravaged their planet? Zithra sat in her command center, watching the planet Earth on her holographic display. The blue and green orb glowed softly, reminding her of the fragility of life. It seemed almost fragile from this distance, yet its people had shown a strength far greater than anything she could have imagined. She had underestimated them, and now it was time to correct her mistake. The communication channel to Earth opened. Jackson appeared on the screen once more, his face tired but determined. "My queen, you've made the right choice," he said, his voice calm but filled with gratitude. "We don't seek to destroy you. We don't seek to conquer your people. What we ask for is simple, a chance for both of our species to survive and thrive together. Zithra's eyes lingered on the screen, studying Jackson's face. It wasn't just the words, but the sincerity in his voice, the conviction. He wasn't asking for victory or revenge. He was asking for peace. Zithra took a deep breath and spoke. I have spent my life conquering, Jackson. My people have always believed that only the strongest can survive, and only the strongest deserve to rule. But you humans, you've shown me something different, something I never believed possible. You fight for each other, for something greater than yourselves. I've never seen that kind of strength before. Jackson's face softened. It's not about being the strongest, Queen Zithra. It's about working together, finding a way to build something better. We may have our differences, but I believe we can learn from each other. Zithra felt the weight of his words. They resonated deep within her. Her entire life had been dedicated to the idea of power through control, through strength. But the humans had shown her that true strength could come from unity, from compassion, from understanding. Your species is unlike any I have encountered, Zithra continued. I will open negotiations with your leaders. We will work together to find a solution that benefits both our peoples. For the first time, Zithra felt a sense of hope, something she had never felt before. Could the Carrie truly coexist with humanity? Could they move beyond their differences and create something new? As the transmission ended, Zithra turned to Valerix, who had been silently observing the conversation. The commander's face showed a mixture of surprise and disbelief. My queen, are you truly going to allow this? To end the war? Zithra nodded. Yes, Valerix. I have seen enough. Our strength has always been in our ability to conquer, but perhaps our future lies in our ability to build. It's time to change our way of thinking. We may have once been the conquerors, but we may now be the learners. Valerix hesitated, unsure how to respond. The idea of peace was radical, something that went against everything the Kiteri had believed for centuries. But Zithra's resolve was clear, and in her eyes, there was no doubt. Over the next few days, both the Kiteri and human representatives met in a neutral space, a place neither side could claim as their own. It was the beginning of a new kind of diplomacy, one that was shaped not by power or force, but by respect and understanding. As the talks began, Zithra found herself sitting across from Jackson once again. The room was tense, but there was a shared hope in the air. It wasn't just a hope for peace, but a hope for something more. A hope for a future where both species could coexist and thrive together. Jackson spoke first, his voice steady. We are willing to share our knowledge with you, Queen Zithra. We are willing to help your people heal, rebuild, and grow. But we need to know that we can trust you. Zithra nodded. You have my word. I will not betray that trust. I am not asking for forgiveness, Jackson, but I am asking for a chance, for us to learn from each other. The humans and the Kiteri had both suffered greatly, but now they had the opportunity to create something new. Zithra looked around at the faces in the room, humans and Kiteri alike, and for the first time in her life, she felt something other than dominance and power. She felt something stronger, the possibility of a shared future. It was a beginning, not just of peace, but of a new era, one where both species could learn, grow, and build together. The war was over, but the real challenge had only just begun, and Zithra was ready to face it, not as a conqueror, but as a learner.